3. JJ, will you please show us the air brake test?
Yes, I will perform the air brake test using the acronym SALSSP. S-A-L-S-S-P. The first S stands for safe start, which means that before I turn on the engine, I turn on the electricity and make sure that the gauges get a chance to recalibrate. I can hear it, and if I keep an eye on the ABS light, I wait for it to come off, and when it comes off, I know that it's fine to turn on the engine. This is what we call a safe start, which brings us to the next step, the air leak test. To start the air leak test, I look at my air pressure gauges. I have two of them, one for each tank, the front air tank and the rear air tank. The air pressure should be approximately 120 psi to start the air leak test. At that point, I will turn off the engine, turn the electricity back on, apply the service brake with my foot, and release the parking brake. To release the parking brake, I have to push it. When you want to apply that's that yellow diamond here. When you want to apply it, you pull. When you want to push it, when you want to release it, you push it. So in this case, I will push it to release. So I'm applying the service brake, I release the parking brake. At that point, I should lose no more than 10 psi immediately. Then after that, I observe the air pressure gauges for an entire minute to see how much additional air pressure I lose. It should be no more than an additional 3 psi loss per minute. So let's pretend a minute went by and we lost no more than 3 extra psi per minute. This takes us to the next part of the test, which is the low air pressure warning signal. I will fan off the brake, the service brake, with my foot. When the air pressure reaches approximately 60 psi, we will hear a buzzer and see a light. They will indicate that we have low air pressure. They are our low air pressure warning signals. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm fanning out the brake. It reached 60 psi, approximately 60 psi. That's why we see the light and we hear the signal, the buzzer. At this point, I will keep fanning the brakes. When the air pressure reaches approximately 30 psi, the parking brake should pop out on its own. That is what we call the spring brake part of the test. So that's what I'm doing right now. I keep fanning the brake, and as it reaches approximately 30 psi, the parking brake pops out. So it's now in application. That completes the air brake test, and now I will do a safe start again. My electricity is already on, so I can do a safe start just turning the engine on. I don't have to worry about the brakes because my parking brake is still on. So I can release my service brake, give it a bit of gas to build up the pressure. So we went basically so far through S for safe start, A for air leak test, L for low air pressure warning signal, and another S for spring brake. Now I'm getting prepared for the service brake part of the test. Once the pressure reaches above, reaches approximately 60 psi or goes above 60 psi, we will no longer hear the buzzer, the signal, and we will no longer see that light that indicates low air pressure warning. It's about to happen. This is it. Now, we let the pressure back up. We want it to be back at approximately 120 psi. We don't want it to go too high because there is a governor, that is a device that cuts a burst of air that prevents the pressure from building up too much. So the pressure shouldn't go much higher than 120 psi. Otherwise, if that happens, that means that the system doesn't work properly. So I let the pressure back up, build back up to approximately 120 psi. And this is it now. So I can now perform the service brake part of the test. So what I do, I apply my service brake with my foot. I let the engine run. I release my parking brake by pushing it in. I put the transmission into drive. I let the vehicle roll no more than 5 miles per hour for sure. It has to go very slow just to see if it's gonna budge. I release the service brake again and we'll put it back on, apply it back on immediately to show that's what I just did, you see, to show that my service brake works. This leads us to the last part of the test. It can be performed in two different ways. That is the parking brake test. What we can do is to either apply the parking brake from the get-go by pulling it, give the vehicle some gas to see if it goes anywhere. And while I do that, I leave the transmission into drive. And I see that the vehicle doesn't go anywhere, it's not budging. So that means that the parking brake works. Another way to go about it is to apply the service brake, release the parking brake, leave the transmission into drive, let the vehicle roll, and as the vehicle rolls, apply the parking brake by pulling it to make sure that it stops the vehicle. That's what I just did. It stops the vehicle and works.